Thanks so much for tuning into Talking Point. I'm your host, Neeraj Shah. Neighbors envy, owners pride. I reckon that's the best way to describe somebody who's held on to Info Edge simply because all through the years they've shown that never mind how much people talk about the kind of valuations that it trades at, how much some of its own investments could come into slight issues at some point of time, they end up smelling like roses. The question to the CFO Chintan Thakkar today is about how does he see business environment, some of the key verticals that they operate in, and what could be in store for the rest of the year, arguably the next 12 to 18 months. Chintan, great having you. Thanks so much for joining in.
Thanks,
The
Neeraj.
world's eyes are on India's tech companies, right? Simply because of all that's happening in China and around. So it's probably the best time for a company like you to make investments, to nurture your investments and to grow them.
Yep. Yeah. In some other ways, you can also say that that's also one of the outcomes of pandemic. That globally, all the companies are going more and more towards digitization, and people have recognized digital as an kind of a channel to go and do business. Even the offline companies, the traditional, conventional kind of companies, also have started adopting it. So yeah, that's a great news, for tech companies. But from the recruitment stand, it also means that there's a huge battle for the tech talent. And in some ways, our company gets impacted, our own employees gets impacted. But on the other hand, it's also our business, so we also benefit out of that.
Yeah, actually, that's a nice pull-in pressure for you. Let's try and talk about that. Since you started off with that, Chintan, let me ask you about Naukri, right? Because everywhere, every CEO that I speak to speaks about this war for talent in the IT space, right? IT outsourcing. I mean, you must be feeding, your business feeds right into it. How is the scenario on Naukri? The tailwinds, are they expected to sustain for a bit longer? And does that therefore bring about a very sharp J-curve kind of an impact, even if it's short-lived for Naukri?
Yeah. So my sense is that, yes, because the underlying trend of digitization is not a short-term trend. It's not a flash in the pan. So this is going to continue for a long period of time. And this is just not coming because of outsourcing and it's only the impact of global companies, but it's also the, the internal, kind of evolution that's happening, right? The domestic companies, right? Also about how the ecosystem for the startups have changed and the tech startups have started coming up. So this impact is cumulative, and that's why it's likely to remain for a longer period of time, in my view.
Okay. So, let me ask you, let me rephrase this question. And at some point of time in the interview, Chintan, I'll also ask you about the impact that it has for your own attrition levels, if you will, because you are a predominantly tech company, so to say. But still, first, everybody seems to believe that large portions of growth that have come in or might come in is because of the kind of red hot war of talent in the IT outsourcing space. You are trying to tell me it's not just IT outsourcing, the rest of the sectors as well are seeing the war for IT talent, but it's not restricted to IT outsourcing companies.
That's correct. That's very right.
And is it happening in other pockets as well? Because selectively we are seeing fair degree of how do I say growth in pharma, in chemicals, and there is this belief that the manufacturing renaissance would start, and therefore the talent requisites for that side of the business will also pick up. Are you seeing signs of that? Does Naukri kind of dive into those recruitment pockets as well?
Yes, certainly. So Naukri is, probably the largest kind of a database that we have. So actually, what you see on Naukri is what is a reflection of what's happening in white collar job in the Indian economy, right? It gets mirrored on our platform, right? So whatever is out happening over there, if it's an IT outsourcing or is it pharma or education or whatever, gets reflected on our platform. So it's more of an outside in kind of an approach, so it definitely gets reflected there. But more interestingly, to just kind of to expand on your comment, is that it's just not about some large pharma company that I'm talking about. I'm saying that even next door mom and pop store have started talking about saying, hey, I need to have a website, I need to build my app, I can probably get some delivery done, I can connect with some of the other tools that are being available, and the network of such stores are being created and all that. So I'm saying even at that level, people have started about saying, hey, I need some technology, some technical guy who can help me to build this infrastructure, IT infrastructure.
Yeah, well, that's true. And that could be interesting. So therefore, the momentum in Naukri, at least, I don't want to make this a Naukri interview. I'm moving on to the other pieces, but I'm just trying to figure that out. You reckon the momentum in Naukri can continue for the
Yeah.
foreseeable future?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, of course, the April and May was kind of impacted because of because of pandemic, lockdown, and the severity, as we know, was very high, right? But still, I think it was Naukri was kind of relatively doing much better. And of course, when we saw June, and then I think month over month, we have been seeing an improvement in terms of how the traffic is moving in. So it looks like a trend line.
So the July, August, September quarter seems to be fairly robust thus far. We've kind of
And it's too
done
early
quite
for
well.
me to really, really say that. But I'm saying that month over month, we are definitely seeing a trend line. So if I have to just extrapolate that, then yes, you can, take that inference. But of course, we'll see. Of course, the wave three is the big, qualification here, the caveat that we need to put it out, right? So
Yeah.
I'm not undermining what's going on else on the economy, on the non-tech sector, and also on the health sector, on the health side of it, right? I think that caveat is there.
Yeah, no, agree completely. The other bit is 99 acres, and here's where I would really want your perspective. Um, unless if April and May wouldn't have happened, I would have been tempted to ask you, and I'm still asking you actually, are the last 12 months the strongest that you've seen for 99 acres in the recent past? Because every real estate company, barring the quarter gone by, has spoken about tremendous sales and tremendous pre-bookings.
I think there is a kind of a yo-yo effect, right? Every time we have seen that real estate segment has started doing well, something or else has happened externally, and that has kind of, impacted, right? The very recent one is the second wave, but before that, if you look at the last quarter of the financial year, I think it has done very well, right? But again, in the initial part of last year's, financial is that, of course, the COVID was again had an impact on it, right? So we have seen it's kind of going up and down, right? Looks to me from that look, the underlying trend or the underlying, pent up demand is there. So the moment some of the external events, impact is gone, that we suddenly see a spurt in that. But if it keeps coming back and hitting in some or the other way, and I think we have seen it last, few years, right from demonetization to GST to RERA to financial market crisis to something or else, is always been kind of going on in real estate. But I think the underlying, momentum is building up. That's what I would think. And again, talking of last quarter, April, May was severely impacted, right? But the June again, it kind of, bounced back, and we are seeing again some kind of recovery happening there.
Yeah. So I guess the only thing that you're saying is that while the month on month, and take it a month at a time, but it's difficult to give a secular uptrend guidance of sorts for 99 acres. It might be doing well in spurts, but there are something or the other that pulls it down one month or 2 months in a year.
Yeah, there are certain events that are happening externally which comes and kind of, so I would say that yes, there is a secular, growth story over there, but the external environment has kind of not been so kind to real estate, business. So there could be an impact of that.
Okay. Now, billings for Shiksha as well, I believe, low base, of course, but grew strongly. And from whatever little I read, billings are a very big lead indicator for your business. So can you tell us a bit about this? Because usually conversations around InfoEdge are restricted to Naukri and 99 acres, maybe Jeevan Sathi. I want to talk about some of the others. So tell us a bit about Shiksha.
Yeah. So I think, what's happening again, pandemic has accelerated the trend that students as well as colleges and universities are relying more and more online mechanism to fill their seats and to find out the right courses, right? So both the communities have started accepting this as a platform to go and do whatever they want to do. So of course, look, what happens is that colleges, universities, the top 51, people are always rushing for it, but there's a long tail, right? And there's a long tail of students as well, and they need to figure out where to go, what to do, what not to do, and all that. So I think Shiksha is a great platform. It has got a lot of user-generated content as well. And now that there is a much better acceptance, from the universities and colleges, that yes, this is the way to now really attract the students or to go and approach them, solve their queries, and see if they can come on board. Right. So I think that's been happening. Right. Despite the fact that colleges and universities have actually under pressure because of whatever has happened in last 12 months. So they are actually under pressure, but nonetheless, they have seen this as a new way of doing the business. And that's why you are seeing some kind of a growth, in that business.
So are billings a good lead indicator? And do you reckon that the growth out here could be a lot more predictable? One, the base being what it is, and two, the fact that people talk about how education and medication are the two recession-proof sectors.
Yeah, so growth, means, I just would like to qualify that, okay, there's a kind of a seasonality also inbuilt into it. So we'll have to really see that, because this is more related to the admissions and things like that. But you are right, billing is a kind of a lead indicator of, what has happened, rather than looking at the revenue. So to that extent, I agree. The truth is that right now colleges and universities are under pressure. Right? So I would say that, it's still not out of woods in some ways. And again, this wave 3 and all that, I think could be even global travel could be a big factor, which will impact, how this growth will come.
Okay, one word, and I think the derivation of your earnings and your call was that you guys plan to invest in Jeevan Sati to up the game a little bit from where it is right now. What's leading to this? Tell us a bit about it.
Well, we have been doing that consistently. Even last 12 months, if you see, we have been continuously investing behind Jeevan Sati as a brand. And that's kind of leading to some kind of a cash burn in that particular vertical. But that's a planned investment that we intend to do, right? We do recognize that we are not the dominating site on this particular vertical, but we do have an aspiration, and we are investing behind this, and we think that we are climbing up, because there's a much higher growth in volume than what you might see in value terms, right? And that's kind of encouraging for us. You will continue to see this investment in the next coming quarters.
Okay. So before I get to some of the other pieces, I just wanted to understand if indeed, and here's the question that I had, that if ad expenses relative to sales growth in a Naukri, maybe in a 99 acres, save Jeevan Sati out, but the others, if the ad expenses continue to be lower than sales growth, is it safe to assume that the margin profile in the near term could see a bit of a bump up? Natural operating leverage and the fact that you might need to advertise less.
Yeah, well, this may be a true for Naukri, for the recruitment business. In any case, that's a smaller line item for us. For 99 acres right now, this might be true, but what may happen is that if we see that the green shoots are there and there's a momentum happening, we will increase our spend, and that could probably be much more than what the growth rate in sales could be, because then the investments will start happening in advance of revenue, right? So you might see, but the other way around is that we might start spending much more, in that particular vertical. And like I said, Jeevan Sati will continue to invest in that.
No, so you did what, 28% in Q1. You referred to the possibility of earlier investments, and you at the start of the interaction said that maybe, just maybe, employee cost, which was flat in Q1, you never know what could happen there because the war on talent impacts you as well. So is 28 the peak of sorts, or do you reckon that there is a probability by natural operating leverage for the margins to move up?
Yeah, well, again, I'm saying that the large part of our overall margin is Naukri, and there we are seeing the economies of scale coming in, right? So despite the hike, in terms of the wage inflation that we are seeing today, and given that marketing is not a large part of expense for Naukri, I think we are overall seeing the improvisation. But there would be an investment that's happening through our P&L through some of these expense line items in businesses like 99 acre and Jeevan Sati. But of course, Naukri is a much larger component of our overall growth story.
Fair call. One last question before we wrap this up, Chintan, and that is, as I said, conversations around InfoEdge, because of the dominance of Naukri and some of the other two verticals get kind of caught up in that. I would want to understand from you what else is looking promising out there. I mean, Zomato is charting its own course, Policy Bazaar own course. So they are anyways not within per se or purview their investments for you more than anything else. What else is looking promising, which may come up and become big in the times to come? What else, what new have you done in the last 6 months?
Well, if you really look at from a long-term standpoint, the entire investment activity, right now there is a public market validation of what we always believed in, right? And our investment in private markets have now started getting recognized in public market. So I think that's now new confidence that yes, this is something which can create a great value for our stakeholders. And we have been kind of expanding that. So we just keep talking about the two companies, Policy Bazaar and Zomato, but there are other roughly around 20 companies, 20 plus companies at least that we have invested in. And we'll continue to invest more on new companies, as well as keep doing the follow-on rounds on some of these companies who are doing well. So that part of the pie also, when you look at the long-term horizon from the value creation timeline, I think that part also, that piece also will do well and continue to create more value for our stakeholders.
Okay. I'll wrap up this interview by asking you again, what within the new investments, I don't want to get into names if you can't, but what themes within the new investments are looking very exciting?
There are 5-6 companies that, and you can go on our website and look at that, the investments that we have made from 2000, let's say 2016 to 2019. 5 or 6 companies, are kind of, there, and they all seem to be getting a lot more interest from the investors and getting the newer rounds from, from the investors at a much higher valuation.
Okay.
So yeah.
Apple, we'll do that. Maybe investors will do that as well. But good show in Q1. May it continue. Thanks so much for speaking to us, Mr. Chintan, and all the best.
Thanks, Neeraj. Thanks for having me.
The pleasure is ours, and viewers, thanks for tuning into this conversation.